And so, like I said, you know what? This is a time of when women get to that age of when they start going through menopause, and when they start to go through menopause in their body, you know, I really have come to understand, you know, as they go into their 40s, you know, especially late 40s and mid 40s, you know, into their 50s, sometimes into their early 60s, that, you know what, I understand why it's called menopause. You know, it's almost like pause from a man kind of thing, because your body's going through a process. It's going through a process, and because of that, you're going through many things in your body that doesn't function the way that it should function. And then I have found, as I've started to do a little bit of you know, looking into this, where this is really at the time when men land up having affairs. That this is really at the time that then you'd be amazed of how, you know, women, you know, that people have been married for like 20 something years, and then it's always at this time when the affairs start to happen. Is always at this time of when women are going through this menopause time. And because why? At the end of the day, a man's supposed to still exercise the self-control that needs to come. And this is what I'm saying. You know, Joseph, you know, he exercised self-control. A woman's coming all over him, but he exercised self-control. And so what I'm saying is, you know what, if Joseph, being a young man, was able to do this, why is it that in this generation, because there's so much sexual things around us, everywhere you turn, it's sexual things, from billboards to the way women dress, to what's on the TV, to everywhere you turn, sexual things are all around us. And so because of that, I find that men are falling more and more into sexual sin. It's like it's never been as rife as what it is right now. It's like there really is an attack on marriages and on specifically men falling into this temptation. But it's because of the society that is there. I mean, I sometimes feel sorry for my own sons. You know, when I look and see how these young girls get dressed, I say, how do they keep sane? And now you can't even watch a normal movie without there being some or other sexual scene in it, you know? And so, here's this Joseph, and he's running for his life, saying, oh boy, I can't fall for this. But she takes his cloak. And I imagine, what crime did he commit that he chose not to do the wrong thing in going to sleep with his master's wife? And because of that, she cries out, and this man gets put in jail for a crime he doesn't even commit. And this is now when we really start to see that, my goodness, how many times we are suffering for something we didn't even do. Going through many things in our lives. And we didn't even do it. We didn't even do anything wrong. I mean, like I said, even in Dylan's case. I mean, at school, he was being persecuted by the teachers, by some of the teachers there. Why? All because he started to do what was right. And the more he did what was right, the more they were coming up against him. And so, many of us, this is, sometimes we don't understand why we go through certain things, and it's not because we're doing anything wrong, but it's because we've now started to do something right. And the minute we start to do something right, things come against us. So, this happens to be the story of Joseph. And yeah, imagine, Joseph now lands up in jail, and I mean, we're not told exactly how many years Joseph goes to jail, but boy, he sits in jail for some time. But isn't it amazing? Because once again, coming into jail, it tells him that even when he was in prison, the favor of the Father was upon him. And Father was with him. And he blessed him. And isn't it interesting that while he's there, what he learned in Potiphar's house in how to run a household, which this was now just a small little household, well, it couldn't be very small, but he had a couple of servants and everything, but Joseph was the one that was in charge of running the whole household for Potiphar. But because of what he learned there, he was now chosen to run the whole prison. And now he was put in charge of the whole prison, and having to maybe sort out the meals and sort out everything of what needs to be, how much food needs to be bought, and doing the books like what we would understand as being doing the books. Because Joseph was a man that was, the father had given much insight and favor, and he knew. But in this whole time, Joseph was being equipped. Because think about it. If Joseph didn't learn what he learned in Potiphar's house, to run the household for Potiphar with all the servants underneath him and run an entire household, how was he eventually going to run the prison? And eventually what he learned running the prison was how he was going to run an entire nation. And so sometimes the Father's ways are not our ways, and the way the Father goes about doing things we don't understand. Because Joseph was a man that, I remember in last year, the beginning of last year, when I was trusting Abba for us to be able to go to Israel. We were going to Israel. We had planned to go as a family for Pesach last year, 2015. And then all of a sudden, my little bit of money that I had put aside, I was like saving up some of my husband's bonus that he got in December, and then we got this unforeseen bill that came our way, and there was all the money gone, and I was crying my little heart out and saying to the Father, I can't believe this. I'm trying my best to try to see that I can put a little bit of money together, and now this thing comes away. And I remember crying so much as I was so devastated and so broken. And the Father still turned around and he said to me, Natalia, do you remember Joseph? He says, I'm not finished with your story. I'm still writing your story. I'm still writing your book. Your book is not finished yet. And the Father was so faithful. That was a little bit of, and really it was like, it wasn't a lot, but it was all I had. And then I started up again from January, started up saving again from end of January, and so it was. But can I tell you something? In the end, Father provided, where I had people that blessed us. And in the end, I was given 50,000 rand that people blessed us for us to be able to travel as a family to Israel. And I was trying to put my little bit of money together that wasn't going to go anywhere. And yes, I was very upset with what it went for. And, I was not in the right frame of mind. And I really was crying out to my Father. And the only thing that I got from heaven, because I said, Father, I don't understand. Why do I always just have to suffer? What the heck? I just get on my feet and I get knocked down again. What is it? And then I just remember him saying to me, because we were in January, so it was at the time of when we were busy reading the book of we were busy reading Genesis, and we were busy with Joseph's story at the time. And I just heard him say to me, do you remember Joseph? I'm not finished with your story. I'm still writing your story. And praise Abba, he's still writing my story to this day. He hasn't finished the book yet. The book has an ending. He's only started it at the beginning. And he's still in the process of writing the story. So I just want to encourage you today that if you are in this place where the Father is really taking you through a difficult time, remember Joseph. He's still writing your story. And so when you get knocked down right now and it looks like the end of the world, I'm sure for Joseph it looked like the end of the world. As a matter of fact, that's something that when I read Joseph, that really, I couldn't really fault Joseph on many things, but I do remember one thing. When he was sitting in prison and he had to interpret the butler's dream and interpret the baker's dream. And, there was a gifting that the Father had given him on how to interpret dreams. And so here comes the butler and the baker and they have dreams, and that's just to show you how the Father was with Joseph the whole time, even while he was in prison. that interprets their dreams. And he makes one little mistake. And he says, remember me when you come out of there. So he was still putting his trust. This is what the Father showed me. Joseph was still putting his trust in the arm of the flesh at that time. He still hadn't understood that he was there. It was all the Father's hand that was upon his life. And he was going to stay there for as long as what he had to. And it clearly says that he stayed for another 2 years after that. After the baker and the butler, after interpreted the dreams, when eventually the bakers, exactly what Joseph spoke came to pass, it was only after that. I mean, the butler, exactly what was spoken of the baker and the butler, both of it came to pass. But did they remember Joseph? No, they did not. Because there wasn't a reason for them to remember Joseph. You understand? But it was interesting that when eventually the Pharaoh was in a predicament of where he had this dream and nobody could interpret it in the land, that all of a sudden the butler remembered that there was a young Jewish boy that was in a prison that had interpreted his dream, but it was 2 years later already that this had happened. And at the appointed time, it's amazing that I love Joseph's story, because he comes out of a prison straight into a palace. Straight into a palace. And understand, he doesn't just go and just help the Pharaoh. He becomes second in charge of the land of Mitzrayim. And the land of Mitzrayim at that time had become the greatest nation in all the nations of the world, because they were the only nation that had food to be able to give to the nations around the world at the time. And people were coming from all the nations to come and get food from Mitzrayim, because of Joseph's wisdom that the Father had given him on how to be able to run how to operate the food. Because this is what he was doing in Potiphar's house. This is what he was doing in the prison. This is eventually what he was doing then in the land. On how to handle the food that was going to come in, the grain, and how to split it, and how to keep it, and exactly all of that needed to be done. Like a real accountant, he knew how to handle all of that. But whose hand was upon him? The Father's hand. And so now we look at Genesis 50, 19 to 21, which this is now eventually when exactly what was prophesied to in his life as a young boy, what he saw in a dream about these sheaves bowing down to him, these barley sheaves bowing down to him, and the stars and that bowing down to him. This is when this is when his siblings come to him, even with his father, and they bow down to him, because imagine, he's the second in charge of the land. They don't even recognize him. They thought he was an Egyptian. They didn't even know that this was Joseph. And in verses 19 to 21, it says, Genesis 50, 19 to 21, and Joseph said to them, do not fear, for I am in the place of Eloah. And you intended evil against me, but Eloah intended it for good, in order to do it as it is this day, to keep a great many people alive. And now do not fear, I provide for you and your little ones. So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So imagine this. Joseph now, with his siblings, he plays games with them. If you go read the story, I love the story of Joseph, because imagine, he suffered so much at the hands of these brothers of his. I mean, they sold him into slavery. They first were going to kill him, and then they sold him into slavery. And then he's gone through so much. But Joseph, at the end of everything, was able to understand that even what their brothers meant for evil, the Father had his hand upon it. And he says, what you meant for evil, he was doing it for good. Why? Because the father had already knew that there was a famine that was going to hit in the land of Canaan. In the land of Canaan, there was going to be a famine. And there was going to be no food for his people. And imagine, by Joseph having been set apart, the most important thing was that he was going to be the one that was going to be able to deliver his people then out of a great famine, where then they were able to come and stay in the land of Mitzrayim, where they had the grazing land, they had everything for them to be able to stay there and live comfortably while there was a famine taking place. So Father already pre-planned this. He already knew. And this is why sometimes we do not understand. We do not understand. At the time when we're going through things, we do not understand that at that time we only see the pain around us. That's what I was trying to say to my friend, the one that had tried to commit suicide. I said, you know what? Right now you don't understand what's going on in your life. But Father is going to use your life for a greater testimony, for a greater purpose than what you can see right now. And so sometimes we are in that rut, and we're in that place of where all we can see is the destruction around us. And we cry out to the Father and we say, why? Why are you putting me through all of this? I don't understand. But in the long run, Father is building a testimony with your life. Or Father is going to use you to deliver other people at a later stage. How many of my friends that have come to seek counsel from me, that have come to me, as some of them are going through difficult times, and I will say to them, understand something. Someday, this that you're going through right now, do you know how many people you're going to help in the process? Because you will have a compassionate heart to understand what they're going through. Because at that time, you know it's difficult. At that time, it's really a suffering that you're going through that you don't understand. But there's going to come a time that the Father's going to use that for other people. And that's what we need to understand. But if we have a mindset that we're not supposed to go through anything, and we pray everything away, we're going to run into a problem. So Joseph was going to be an example that the Father was going to use as a suffering servant. That Joseph was going to be an example of a type of a Messiah that was going to come as a suffering servant that suffered for not doing anything wrong. His own brothers selling him up to slavery, so as Yeshua, with his own people selling him out in the end to be crucified, and that they couldn't recognize who he was, that he was one of their own. They didn't recognize him. And so Joseph is a type of a suffering servant that we see. And so when Yeshua comes again, then he comes as a conquering king. But Joseph is everything. I mean, how his identity was hidden from his brothers. That here's this man now. Yeah, he's a conquering king. But what they didn't understand is that he was the very same Joseph that they had put in a pit and sold into slavery. But in the end, the same Joseph that they sold into slavery was the same one that was going to be like a king that they were bowing down to now, that was going to deliver them from a terrible time of famine. And so it's going to be that those same people that sold him, those same people that were keeping my son from entering into an airport, are the same people that do not understand that they're going to need a Messiah, and that they're going to weep when they look upon the one whom they pierced, and they're going to know that he was their Messiah all along. But they can't see him right now. He's hidden from them. His identity is hidden. But there's going to come a time when that identity will be revealed. But you see, Joseph, I'm sure a lot of when he sat in jail, he was being equipped. And I'm sure he had to do a lot of forgiveness. You can't stand and tell me that he didn't have bitterness and hatred and anger towards his brothers. Because he did. Because he was human. And at the end of the day, he had to deal with this. And imagine when he looked upon them. That's why in the long, he played little games with them. He wanted them to suffer a little bit. You understand? He allowed them to go through a little bit of suffering themselves. Like his little game that he played with them. But in the end, he broke down. And this overwhelming love for them came over him. And where he said, you meant it for evil. But I understand that, my Father, the Creator, Yahuwah, He meant it for good. And so that's why we look at Romans. If we just take Romans 8:28, this scripture has brought me so much comfort in so many times when I've been going through things, that Romans 8:28 has brought such comfort to me, because it says, and we know that all matters work together for good to those who love Yahuwah, to those who are called according to His purpose. So at the end of the day, we need to understand that it doesn't matter what we go through. So that even everything that was happening, even in Abraham's life, Father was working out everything that was going for the good in the end, that he was going to become a father of many nations. And then if we start to look at the life of Isaac, if we start to look at the life of Jacob, Jacob starts off as being Jacob deceiver, but eventually wrestles and becomes, one that's get called Israel, that becomes the very name that brings the house of Israel, that become the 12 tribes of the land of Israel eventually. And the name Israel eventually becomes one who wrestles and overcomes. So you see, it's like Elsie has this famous saying that she always says, without wrestling you cannot become strong. Without wrestling you cannot become an overcomer. So you see, at the end of the day, Father's taking us through a process that we may wrestle, sometimes even wrestle with Him. Because Jacob, his name was deceiver. Jacob means deceiver. And did he not deceive his brother? Yes, he did. He took his birthright. Then he took his inheritance. He did. Look, the birthright, the brother basically sold it, for a plate of soup. But then he took his inheritance, his blessing that he was supposed to get. He took that blessing too by deceiving his father. But make no mistake, he didn't get away with it. Because when he falls in love with Rachel, his uncle, the Uncle Laban, goes and deceives him. Because he falls in love with Rachel, and now he has to work 7 years. He works for Rachel, and on his wedding night, he gets deceived and gets given Leah. That he did. He worked 7 years for that. On his wedding night, she's got a bail. He doesn't even know. Only afterwards he realized, hang on a second, it was never Rachel that he married, it was Leah. And then he's upset with his uncle. But hello, now he's got to work another 7 years. Okay. So now you must understand, you're going to be deceiver. You too going to be deceived. You're going to understand what it means to be deceived. He doesn't get away with it. He's going to pay a price. But through all of that, when his uncle becomes deceptive and deceiving him, even when it comes to the cattle and the flock, that the sheep and that he's supposed to leave with, Father gives him great wisdom in how to obtain great wealth. And yet, he was trying to deceive him with how to go about to get all the cattle. He tried to deceive him, but Father gives him wisdom. Because why? Even in the life of Jacob, Father starts to walk with Jacob. And Jacob, even though he started off as being a deceiving man, eventually he gets to a place of when he meets up with his brother Esau, when eventually he's got both his wives and leaves his Laban and goes on his way, and goes on his way to the land of Canaan, and you know what? He's got to meet up with his brother Esau along the way. And he knows if he meets his brother Esau as the one whose name is Jacob, that's the one who he deceived, he's going to kill him. And so he can't meet up with him as being Jacob, because if he meets up with him as being Jacob, that Jacob is the one who is the deceiver, and he's going to be killed, because he knows his brother's on his way with horsemen, with 400 horsemen, and he was on his way to do battle. But that night, he goes into prayer and he wrestles. And he wrestles with a messenger of Yahuwah. And every time you read a messenger of Yahuwah or an angel of Yahuwah, that would have been Yahushua. He wrestled with Yahushua and he says, I do not want you to leave me until you bless me. And so he goes into a time of wrestling. And he wants his name to be changed. He wrestles and he needs his presence as he realizes, I cannot meet with this Esau myself. Because if I meet with him, he's going to kill me. Because I truly have been a deceiver. I deceived my brother. But only you can change this. And that is why he wrestled with the angel of Yahuwah the whole night. And that morning, he blesses him and changes his name from Jacob to Israel, where he now becomes the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. And then from his loins come the 12 tribes of Israel. And Israel now means one who wrestles and overcomes. So now he becomes an overcomer. And that is why when he meets up with his brother, Father is the one who changes the situation, and his brother embraces him and loves him as opposed to come and kill him. Because now he doesn't come face to face with a man whose name is Jacob, but the Father changes his name to Israel. And so each one in our lives need to go through that place of where the Father needs to change us. And I can tell you now, the more you cry out to him to change you, the more trials and tribulations come in your life. And that I know for sure. Because you cannot change unless you go through these trials. I mean, we can try and change our character, but our character's got to be cut away. It's for you to become perfect, without spot or without wrinkle. You're going to have to undergo a facelift. And this is what we're going to have to go through, a facelift. So that is why I say Father will allow circumstances in our lives because he wants us to change our character. He wants us to change the person that we are to become the one that he created us to be. So when we look at Jacob, when he first started off, Jacob was not a man that was truly serving the Father when he first started off. Oh no, not at all. But eventually, he starts to go on a path where more and more he's being groomed by his Creator to be able to become the man that the Father had ordained for him to be. That would be one of the patriarchs. That would be, that we say he is the Yahuwah of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. And so his name is there. And he becomes the father of the 12 tribes. And so that's why I'm saying this is what we need to understand, that if we don't wrestle, we're not going to become strong. And we're not being equipped. And so this is why we are going through a teaching here of where we're just starting to look at understanding that many things of what we go through is to equip us, to prepare us for the things that are ahead of us. And if it's not to equip us, it's definitely to be able to come into the fullness of what He's ordained for you. So we're seeing that each one of these men, like in Joseph's case, Father had already given him a promise in a dream of what he was to fulfill. But there was a process he needed to go through to fulfill that promise. Abraham, Father had given him a promise, but he needed to go through a process to finally become the man that was to fulfill that promise. And so many of us have been maybe given promises by the Father. But do we think we just arrive? Are we just going to fulfill it? No. You might think you are righteous. You might think you've arrived, but you have not. And therefore we need to go through certain things. And that's what the Father is, the process the Father's taking us through. So many times we might be following this word, but the Father needs to be able to crucify within us so that we become more and more like Yeshua. Because that is what the ultimate goal is, that we may become like Him. And if I look at myself, oh my Father, I am far from being there. So far from being there, that all I can do is cry before Him and say, Father, root out of me this wicked heart. Root out of me these wicked ways. I mustn't even think that I am the self-righteous person, thinking that I am beyond all of it, thinking that I've arrived when I haven't arrived anywhere. I'm on my journey, and every day this is a journey that I walk with Him. And be careful that I think I've arrived lest I fall, because He's taking me on a process. But you see, sometimes we get these big prophetic words, and that's why I prefer to run from the prophetic words. Because we get given these big prophetic words and we think, oh cool, this is great, oh wow, did you hear what he said about me, oh this is cool, I get so excited, this is wonderful. Oh hello, the greater the call, the bigger the test. And that's what people don't understand. The greater the call, the bigger the test is that you're going to have to overcome. So there's a great call on your life, fair enough. But do you know what tests you're going to have to endure to fulfill that call? Because if I look in this Bible, that's what I see. For every call, there's many tests. You don't just arrive in that call. You're going to have to write the test to get to that call. And so now we'll look at the life of Job. I mean, this is one man in the Bible that I had said, well, why is this book even in the Bible? Because Job did not make sense to me in what I was being taught by the church. So, in what the church was teaching me and in what Job was busy preaching to me, it made no sense. Because Job's life did not make sense. And I tell you something, many people will try and explain Job, and they still try and put Job in there. Oh, he had lack of faith, and it was because of his lack of faith, and he was doing offerings, and and then the Father just shows you right at the end that you can go on and say whatever, but he's still the great I am that I am that's on His throne. And who stops Him from doing what He wants? Hello? Who are you, the created being, to say to the Creator that He may not do what He wants to do with His created being? Hello? Wait, but who do we think we are? And this is basically, Job teaches me that story. Job teaches me how there are times when the Father will allow you to go through many things because, say now He wants to, like in this case, stand before Satan and says, have you seen my servant Job? You can do whatever you want to him. He ain't going to turn against me. Imagine this. The Father's having a conversation with the devil. And now Job is the matter of the conversation. And imagine if the Father now wants to make Job his example. But now everybody wants to come and bring their little 10 cents worth into this Job story. Serious. And I tell you something, you got to read through Job. Because if you read through Job, you will understand there's times you're going to suffer and it's not even going to make sense. And if the Father chose to do that because He's got another plan in the process, hey, c'est la vie. And if the Father wants to do it because maybe he's had a conversation with the devil about you, c'est la vie for you too. Because that's just the way it's going to be. He's the creator. We are the created being. He's the potter. You are the clay. And he's allowed to do with his clay whatever he wants. And I think for too long, we have sat and put our creator into a box. And he needs to conform to our box. And now we are trying, even through some of these books of the Bible, we're trying to put him into a box and say, well, that's the way you will behave. Well, let me tell you something. I've got news for you. Because there's one thing that you'll read with it, he does with one, that he does different with another. And you can't put him in that box. And you can't grab onto that and say, well, that's what he's going to do with me because that's what he did with that one. No, no, no. He's got an individual relationship with you, and he wants to be able to deal with you the way he wants to deal with you. And that's the way it is. So just because he dealt like that with somebody else doesn't mean he's going to do the same with you. Because each one has their path. You are on your journey. And you need to be able to become what he's got to do with you. And that's the way it is. I mean, understand. Moses was the opposite to Joseph. Joseph was put in the pit. Moses was put in the palace. And then taken out of the palace and put into the wilderness. Hello. I understand. He was saved in a little basket of reeds, gets saved by the Pharaoh's daughter, gets taken into the palace, gets brought up as a prince. Wow. He's not in jail now. This one gets brought up as a prince. Learns the customs and the traditions and the ways of the Egyptians, has to learn everything of what it means, learns the Egyptian language, learns everything that he needs to learn about being an Egyptian. Learns about their gods, learns about their ways, learns about everything. And then all of a sudden realizes, wait a second, my people can't be suffering like this. Here I am in this palace, but look at the way they're treating my people. And then has this, he was already destined to be a deliverer for his people. He was destined to be a deliverer. But now he was going to take matters into his own hands to be that deliverer. And goes and does what? Goes and kills a man. And then he's got to flee for his life. And then, amazing, now he becomes a shepherd of sheep and learns to live in the desert. Because he's had to run for his life. He came from the palace where he had everything going for him into a desert. And learned the ways of the desert. But everything again about Moses' story was that Father was equipping him. He had to learn the ways of the Egyptians. Otherwise, how was he going to stand before Potiphar? I mean, not Potiphar, how was he going to stand before the Pharaoh at the time, in the time of Moses? And know the gods that they would use for the plagues, for this, for that. That he had to know that there was a great I am that I am, that was far beyond the gods that he had been exposed to while he was living as a prince in the palace. He was exposed to this god of Ra. And so when the Father started to take him through those tests, test after test, not take him through the test, that he brought the plagues. Every plague was dealing with a different god of the Egyptians. And who would have known that better than Moses, who knew all of them? So Moses' story again is totally different to a Joseph story. But in the end, it's because the Father had a greater plan that once again had to do with his people. So what makes you think that your story is not about his plan that has to do with his people? Because your life is not about you, yourself, and I. It's not about me, myself, and I. I'm not the queen of my castle. I've been put on this earth for his people. It's about his people. That's why when he appeared to me in my bath, he says, my people don't know me, Natalia. They come to me with their list of prayers. Get my people to know me. It's about his people. So my life is not about how he's got to bless me so I can have a good life and enjoy it while I'm in the process. Everything about my life has always got to do about his people. So I am not my own. I have been bought with a price. And so this is what we need to understand. He's the creator. And the way he does things is totally different. Out of all the little boys, he chose Moses. And Moses was to be spared. And imagine, he was going to be found by the Pharaoh's daughter. And then he was going to have his own, Moses was going to have his own mother nurse him. Because Miriam was there. And when the Pharaoh's daughter found him, she says, "Oh, I know a woman that can nurse him for you." And now, it's amazing how he gets nursed at his own mother's breast. But has to learn the ways of being brought up as a prince. And then from there, has to go into a wilderness. And boy, I tell you, I think Moses must be one of the most patient people. Because what that man had to endure, only the Father knows. Putting up with the moaning, griping, complaining people, oh, I don't know how. For those 40 years in that desert. But you see, Father taught him how he first had to be a shepherd to be able to live in the desert for 40 years, being a shepherd tending sheep. A very lonesome path that he had. But he was learning the ways of the desert. And so the Father was equipping him in everything that he had to go through. Father was equipping him. And sometimes we think, oh, this is just a job. Oh, you know what, this is just, I don't understand this, it's going on right now. Everything about your life is equipping you. There's nothing in your life that the Father hasn't put there for him to equip you. Everything about your life is part of the equipping process of what he's putting you through. That's why he says, all things work together for good for those that love him. So if you are one that loves him, he will use no matter what goes on in your life. I mean, how many times I've sat back and I've said, Father, I tell you, I've made some wrong decisions in my life. Oh my goodness, I can't go back and erase them and change them. The only thing that comforts me is that I say, Father, even this that I've done, that was the biggest mistake that I've made. Can you please bring good out of it? Because I understand that even though I've made the wrong decisions and I've done the wrong thing, can you work it for good? And that in my life I know that even this time last year I was writing one of the biggest tests of my life. And I couldn't see a way out of it. And that test is still in my life, it hasn't gone away. And yet, Father is dealing with my heart and its deep issues of the heart. And I had a decision to make that I could have gone my way. But the Father said, even though you go through difficult time, can you surrender to me and allow me to have my way? Even if right now you can't see the end of the story. And so the only comfort that I have is that I've had to surrender it. And every day leave it surrendered with him. And in the process he's crucifying my flesh 100 times over. As I failed tests, I can't tell you how many. But I have to just pick up from that place of where I failed and say, Father, please help me that I can finally pass this. And so it's the way it goes. And so it is with Job. Because when I was going through this, I said, Father, what have I done to deserve this? Why? Why did you allow this in my life? Why? I serve you, I love you, I do work for you, whatever, you know. Why did I do to deserve this? Why? Why you allow this? You could have stopped this. But at the end of the day, man still has their own decisions to make, and sometimes you suffer at the hand of other people. Because other people's decisions are going to affect you. We are living in this land at the moment being affected by the decisions of the leadership of this land. And we are affected by it. When we were going through our drought and everything else that was going on, I mean, it's destruction that will come. And it's because of the decisions that are being made at top level that we don't have a say in the matter of it. The only thing that we can do is pray. But as long as you are in this world, you are going to suffer one way or the other, because you are going to suffer at the hand of other people, even when it's not you that's doing it, but the decisions that they make will affect you directly. And this is the way it goes. And you can't change people. That's one thing I've realized. The only person that I can try and change is myself. And even then I've realized that not even that I can do. The only thing that I can keep doing is coming to him and saying, I'm trying to change, but I'm trying. And he says, just you surrender. And the more you surrender, the more I change you. But I have understood one thing. That changing process is me going through many things. And there's many tests that come in my life. And I pass some and I fail others. And I'll keep writing it until I finally pass it. But praise the Father that He's merciful. And that's what I find comfort. I find comfort in the fact that I know His grace and His mercy is sufficient for me. That even though today I might have fallen, I can get up tomorrow. That's like I say to what I used to say to all the drug addicts that I used to deal with. I had them coming to me, and I walked the path with drug addicts for a while. And I always used to say to them, it's not how many times you fall, but it's how many times you get up. Because you need to become the one that's going to eventually conquer. You need to become that overcomer. Yes, today you are weak. You fell. Don't stay there. Don't go commit suicide. Get up. Get up. Tomorrow's another day. His mercies are new every morning. So get up from there. So I used to say to them, fair enough. I understand. It's not easy. Okay, so you fell. That's great. Are we trying to move towards going to getting it right? You see, the only time that you're going to give up is when you finally throw in the towel, because you will allow it to get the better of you. But if you're truly trusting Abba and you truly are seeking Abba with all your heart, He's going to help you. But it's going to take your dying to your flesh. And it's a process that you're going to go through. The temptations will be there. Satan will put temptations in your very path. And sometimes you'll fall into that temptation, and then other times you get up and then you'll say, okay, Father, I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't worry about it. You'll just write that test again. It's okay. Don't worry about it. The other one will come around the corner. Don't worry. You'll have another one that will come around the corner. And you'll keep writing them until finally you're going to come over it. Or do you want to be like the Israelites 40 years that went around the same mountain and then they still didn't learn their lesson? I don't want to be one of those. I want to learn my lesson. And that's why I keep crying out to Him and I say, Father, deliver me. Please deliver me of this flesh. And so if we look at Job chapter 1 from verses 6, it says, and the day came to be that the sons of Eluah came to present themselves before Yahuwah, and Satan also came among them. And Yahuwah said to Satan, from where do you come? And Satan answered Yahuwah and said, from diligently searching in the earth and from walking up and down in it. Now doesn't that sound like that scripture that he roams around like a roaring lion looking to whom he can devour? Doesn't it sound exactly like that word? He's walking around like a roaring lion, looking to see whom he can devour. So we need to understand something. Don't for 1 minute think we don't have an enemy. Oh, we have an enemy for sure. We learned that in the Garden of Eden. We have an enemy that hates us. And a lot of what we go through is also his doing. And Yahuwah said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a perfect and straight man, one who fears Eluah and turns aside from evil? And Satan answered Yahuwah and said, is Job fearing Eluah for naught? Have you not made a hedge around him, and around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand, please, and strike all that he has, if he would not curse you to your face. And Yahuwah said to Satan, see, all that he has is in your hands. Only do not lay a hand on himself. And Satan went out from the presence of Yahuwah. I mean, this doesn't make sense to one living soul. Now, the Father's having a conversation with our enemy, and he's busy telling him, look, you know what, the only reason why Job serves you is only because, you know what, you protect him. And you are keeping him, and therefore nothing will befall him. And that is why he doesn't curse you. But look and see, you know what, if you just come and just take your hand from blessing him, and take your hand of protection upon him, he's going to curse you. Sometimes I've sat and I've thought to myself, Father, I wonder if you, with so many of us, have had that same conversation. You know what? She only serves you because you bless her. But let everything be, just come against her and you're going to see. Let her start going through a difficulty. See if she won't curse you. And will we pass the test? Will we pass the test? Imagine, are we in a place that we can say like Job? That we can actually say to the Father, you know what, Father? No matter what Satan does to me, no matter even if you remove everything from my life, I will still serve you. Doesn't matter what I go through, Father. Doesn't matter what comes my way. I will not turn against you. I will still serve you. Can we come to that place? Can he trust us enough that he doesn't even have to have that conversation with the enemy, but that he can say, I know that one. Doesn't matter what you do. And I'm reminded of a scripture. And this is exactly Yeshua speaking. And we'll get into that, where he says, Peter, Peter, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you, that your faith should not falter. When you come back, strengthen your brothers. Interesting, hey? There was a conversation that had already happened between the Father and the devil, where he said, Peter, Peter, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you, that your faith should not falter. When you come back, strengthen your brothers. And you know why I know that scripture so well? Because at the end of the day, that is exactly what someone gave me a prophetic word when I was in 2008 going through all those difficulties of mine. And goodness, you know what it was, you name it. I was writing those tests, and then by 2009 get diagnosed with cancer, and it was one thing after the other. And someone said to me, Natalia, you know what, the Father showed me. And this was the thing that the Father had given me personally. So imagine, Father had spoken to me, and then this man came to confirm what the Father had spoken to me. He said, Natalia, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you, that your faith should not falter. When you come back, will you strengthen your brothers? So, if he decided to have a conversation with the enemy and he asked to sift me like wheat, that my faith should not falter, that even though I was going to be sifted like wheat, but yet my faith wasn't going to falter. But you see, what was it going to be about? When you come back from that place, don't worry, will you be one that will then strengthen your brothers? Because that's what it's going to be about. That's what it's going to be about. And so, you've seen this is exactly what is happening to Job. And I mean, at the end of the day, let's see. Peter was sifted, wasn't he? My goodness, the cock crowed 3 times, just like he was told he was going to deny Yeshua. He denied Yeshua. And then he felt as bad as ever. But then when Yeshua came back, after he resurrected, and he appeared to Peter, and he said, Peter, do you love me? Yes, I do. Peter, do you really love me? But I told you that I love you. And he said the 3rd time, Peter, do you love me? And by this time, Peter was very hurt, because why would he ask him 3 times? And he says, feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. And those 3 times that he asked me, Peter, do you love me, was for the 3 times that Peter had denied him. And now he was going to say to him, Peter, you don't understand. You are going to suffer. You're going to suffer. But guess what? Feed my sheep. Be an encouragement. Be there for them. When they're going through difficulties, encourage them. You know what it's like. And so, this is what we sometimes need to understand. Sometimes we're going through things that we don't understand. How do we know that there hasn't been a conversation? And then all hell's breaking loose in our lives and we don't understand. But is our faith being tested so that we will not falter? And so if we look at Job, if we look at verse 9, chapter 9, verses 32, we see what Job says here. And I mean, Job, if you really got to read Job for you to be able to understand, because Job starts to suffer, and to a certain degree, Job started to complain a lot. But what made it worse is that Job had two friends, that 2 or 3 friends, I can't remember now if it's 2 or 3, and then they come to him, and now they think that, I mean, he's seriously in sin. He's done a lot of things wrong. And they're trying to advise him in so many things. But at the end of the day, in the end of it all, was it really so much because of what Job did? Or was it because of what the Father was doing in the process? And so he says, for he is not a man as I am, that I answer him and we come together into right ruling. So he's talking about Yahuwah. He is not a man as I am, that I answer him and we come together into right ruling. There is no mediator between us to lay his hand upon us both. I mean, at the time there was no Yahushua, that was the mediator. And then he says, let him take his rod away from me and let his dread frighten me. Then I would speak and not fear him. For I am not so within myself. Now imagine what he says over here. Let him take his rod away from me and let his dread frighten me. Then I would speak and not fear him. So if he was not going through some kind of suffering, if he was not having to be through some kind of difficulty what he's going through, he says, then I might not fear him. So if I don't sometimes go through something of where I have to seriously suffer in my flesh, then I might not fear him. You understand? And let me tell you something. Oh boy, let me tell you. I wrote a test like this. Oh boy, I wrote a test. In 2014, was it the beginning of 2014? Yes, I wrote a test. Because there was something that the Father wanted me to tell someone. He had specifically given me instruction to tell somebody something. And this was not quite what I wanted to say. And I'm weighing up the odds and the situation, and I'm looking at the situation, I'm saying, but Father, you can't possibly be wanting me to say this. And the Father says, you tell them what I tell you to tell them, and that's it, end of story. And then he told me not to discuss the situation. Oh no! I decided I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to get some advice from somebody, because I'm weighing up the situation. So the Father gives me specific instruction and he says to me, listen, I seeked his face. He told me exactly what he wanted me to say. He told me exactly what he wanted me to do. I didn't want to hear what he had to say, because I'm looking at the situation. I'm saying, but Father, you can't possibly be saying that, because I'm looking at the situation. I'm saying, but why? Why can't you put your blessing on this, Father? Why? And he's saying, because this is not my will. And I need you to speak and bring a warning. Anyway, I tried to weigh up the situation. So I discussed it with my first friend. And so she weighed up the situation and gave me her view on the matter. By the time I was going to pick up the phone with my second friend to discuss the situation, the Father said to me, I told you not to discuss this. I've told you what you need to do. But guess what? I continued the conversation, and it was interesting because even Elsie then turned around when I put down the phone. She says to me, "Is that who you were talking to? Were you talking to this woman?" I said, I thought you told me that the father said you were not to discuss the matter." I said, "He did." She said, "So why did you?" I said, "I don't know." I said, and listen to this, immediately after I put down that phone, I had a case of urticaria that came upon my body, that I started to scratch, that eventually, after 2 weeks of going through hell in my body, utter hell in my body, I couldn't even sleep. I used to lie at night and scratch myself until I was bruised. Until eventually I landed up in a hospital. That's how bad it was. And boy, Father was trying to teach me something. And when I was repenting before him, he said to me, "Natalia, I need you to understand something." When I spoke to Joshua, and I said to him, "You are to get the Ark of the Covenant, get the Levites, and you are to cross over to the other side." Well, it was in flooding. Did Joshua go and have a little discussion and just maybe go and find out from the Levites if they thought it was a good idea? Wait, let me just hang on a second. I've got Yahuwah Sabaoth, the Yahuwah of Sabaoth, standing in front of me, and now he's giving me instruction and telling me, "You are to go and cross the river Jordan, and it's going to be when it's in flood, and it's when you put your feet into the water, you're going to have to go." It wasn't like with Moses where they stretched out the rod and it parted and then they all crossed. No, they were going to cross when it was in flood. And they had to believe that he was going to, imagine, they're going to think he's mad. But that's the instruction he was given. And Joshua now, he says to me, now imagine Joshua is to go and have a discussion quickly with the Levites and say, "Listen, this is what I heard. Do you think it's a good idea?" What do you think they were going to say to him? Absolutely not. Let's wait until the river is at its lowest, when it's it's not in flood, and then it's easy for us to cross, and then we cross to the other side. No, that's not what he wanted. He wanted to be able to be seen as he's the miracle one, the miracle working Yahuwah Sabaoth. And he gave Joshua explicit instruction, and Joshua was to keep the instruction. And he says, "There's going to come a day, Natalia, when I'm going to need you to speak a word, and you can't be doubting it in your mind and thinking, oh, maybe I should go and discuss it with someone. I tell you what to do and you do it. Finished. End of story." He was trying to teach me something. So guess what? Oh, I'll end up in hospital, all right, with this urticaria that now, the very thing I'd never wanted in my body, cortisone and everything. I'm having to get cortisone injections and everything because my body's swelling up to such a degree. Because of what? My disobedience. My disobedience. And I had to learn. Don't disobey me. You seeked me. You did everything. I told you what you need to do, and this is what I tell you to do, and you don't question me. So I am talking about now, I'm not giving you somebody else's story. I'm giving you my own year. And then that same year, he was going to teach me. So this was the beginning of the year. Then that same year, it comes to the end of the year. Now we are on a mission. We had gone on a mission to Greece, and the whole time that we were on this mission, I'd been wearing a certain kind of shoes that was closed because we were climbing, mountains and things. But now I wanted my comfortable Skechers, And so that day we had arrived in Philippi, at the church of Philippi. We had gone to the church of where Paul wrote the book of Philippians. So we were in Philippi, and we needed to go do some declarations in the church of Philippi. But I didn't know there wasn't any specific things that we needed to go do, to go climb mountains or anything. So that morning I get up and I decided I'm going to put on my Skechers, my Skechers shoes. I wasn't going to put on the closed sort of like Takis kind of shoes that was to be worn, because now I'm relaxing a bit. And I clearly heard him say to me, it would not be a good idea for you to wear those shoes. I think you need to wear and he says to me, you are to wear the other shoes. And I said to him, no, I don't think so. I said, Abba, no, I don't think so, Abba. I said, you know what, I don't want to wear those shoes today. I said, you know what, I've worn them all these days, and we're not going to do anything very specific to go climbing, anything. So I thought, I just want to use my Skechers. They're more comfortable. But understand something. This is the creator of the universe telling me I am to put on those other shoes. But I don't want to listen. No, because I want what my flesh wants. My flesh wants my Skechers. But by this time, my Skechers shoes were not very tight on my feet. They were a little bit more loose, but they're comfortable to walk with. So I wanted the Skechers ones. So I put on my Skechers. Anyway, we are now in the car. And when we were about to leave, the story goes that we had already been, Greece is a problem for you to blow a shofar. They had like a problem in the ruins, where there's ruins, to blow a shofar. So already when we were in Athens, I had to ask for permission to blow the shofar. I was denied the permission, said no. But when I got to Delphi, I just went and blew my shofar, didn't ask for permission, blew the shofar, and when I came down, I got into serious trouble because I'd gone and blown the shofar. And Elsie got such a fright, and I got a bit of a fright as well, where I could have seriously been arrested for having gone and blown my shofar. So now I'm in the car, and now I'm contemplating, should I take my shofar or shouldn't I take my shofar? But I clearly hear the Father say to me, you need to take the shofar. But what do? I decide I'll ask Elsie. I said, do you think it's a good idea for me to take the shofar? She says, absolutely not. You already got into trouble in Delphi. We're not going to go down that road again. You got the cell phone on, you got the shofar sound on your cell phone, just play it from the cell phone. But I hear the Father say to me, you must take the shofar. But I don't. Because you know what? Why listen to him? I'll rather listen to man. So anyway, I get out and don't take the shofar. Now, understand, I'm getting to Philippi. I'm in serious trouble already. Number one, I'm not wearing the shoes I'm supposed to be wearing. Number two, I'm supposed to take a shofar that I have not taken. So, we get there. And there's not really, we were only really going to read the scriptures. But all of a sudden, the Father says to me, I want you to climb to the top of the Colosseum. So there's this like Colosseum there. Climb to the top of the Colosseum, and I want you to be able to, declare a scripture there. So, understand, there's times that the Father's going to do things that you don't know. The other things He prepped me beforehand, but this, I got it on the moment. So I start to climb up to the top of the Colosseum. I get at the top of there, and now there's not even anybody around. It would have been wonderful to have my shofar. Wow. I could have blown my shofar all I liked up there, but now I don't have the shofar. So now I'm having to sit and play it from my cell phone. So I'm holding the cell phone in my hand, and I'm busy blowing the shofar, but from the cell phone. And so I then start to declare the scripture Father told me to declare, and then I started to play a specific song that He wanted me to play. So as I'm coming down, I'm playing the song, and I'm coming down, walking down the Colosseum, and as I'm walking down the Colosseum, I go and I jump from one rock, it was like the Colosseum's got like these big steps, and I go jump from one step to the next step, and as I jump, those very shoes that I had on my feet like sort of came loose on my foot, because when I jumped, it sort of like came loose. So when I landed, the shoe fell off my foot and twisted my whole foot, and my whole foot twisted. I go flying, and I'm already going flying down those Colosseum steps, and all of a sudden, my cell phone, is holding my hand at the top. It's open. It's not even closed. It's open, and that phone hits the concrete floor, which by now I'm thinking is shattered in a million pieces. And now it goes skidding, and as it skids, it's like an angel stopped me from going further down the steps, and I'm now gone flying. I've fallen now. And all of a sudden, Elsie says, she starts screaming, and immediately there's this man there. He sees as well, and they come to me, and are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm a little bit, knees a bit grazed in the hand, and I'm worrying about my cell phone, and by the grace of Yahuwah, some cell phones, if this was a Samsung, falls from a little just a little from your lap to the floor, and it shatters. I mean, the glass breaks. It fell from the top. I'm holding it in my hand, high up, and it fell with my hand flat down. But yet that screen did not crack. The only thing that did is it scratched the screensaver, and only the bottom part of the metal was a little bit scratched. But the cell phone didn't break, because Father was going to teach me something. Now, my foot is so sore. I've twisted this foot to a degree that I'm thinking, oh, Father, have mercy. Have mercy. I get down to the bottom, and now I'm already battling to walk, and this foot is sore. And I'm trying to make out that I'm okay. But boy, I want to cry because of the pain. And now we went and we sat down, proceeded to continue with doing the scripture reading that we had to do and everything, but this foot was so painful. Anyway, I get into the car. And by the time I get into the car, in my spirit, I now know I've been disobedient. And this is because of my disobedience. If I had been wearing my other shoes, this would have never happened. Do you see? Because I said to the Father, but I'm not going to climb anything, but yet I had to go climb that Colosseum. Now I wasn't going to blow the shofar because I can blow it from the cell phone. But now I would have had an opportunity to blow it. I didn't take it. And now I'm in that car, I start repenting. And now I'm crying because this foot of mine is getting more and more swollen. And I'm saying, Father, have mercy. Please forgive me. What have I done? Forgive your child for my disobedience. But now there's a price to pay for your disobedience, you understand? Because yes, He's going to be very faithful to you. Because He's a loving Father, He's a merciful Father. But you're going to learn that you're not going to do this again. You have to learn. This is why He chastises those whom He loves. It says in Hebrews, He chastises those whom He loves. Why? Because my son, when I tell my sons, you need to do this, you need to do that, and they don't do it, they will have a punishment that's going to come their way. And so, then, by the time from there we were on our way to Thessalonica. We get to Thessalonica, and I understand. Thessalonica, now we still need to do the church of Thessalonica. And Thessalonica is now where we need to be able to, not the church of Thessalonica, well, we need to read the scriptures in Thessalonica, but Thessalonica is the very place where we're going to end. Greece is ended in Thessalonica, and this was the place where it was going to be Yom Kippur, and I needed to dance a specific song for the Father. And this is going to be the last day. This is when it's Yom Kippur, and I need to finish off this whole mission that we've just been on for 10 days ended with Thessalonica, and it's got to end with me being able to do a dance. Now imagine this, I'm getting out the car, I can't even walk. Now the next day I'm going to have to dance. It took, I can't tell you what, for me to get out that car, and I was in such pain. By the time I got up to the hotel, my foot had started to swell to such a degree, and it was bruised, and it was sprained, and I thought, I can't even walk on this foot. And understand, I've still got 3 weeks ahead of me in Israel, that's in Jerusalem, walking. And this is where we're staying, is like one of the furthest away that we've stayed before when we stayed in Israel. And I'm thinking, oh my Father, how am I going to cope with all of this? How am I going to cope? And I immediately got on the phone to many people. Elsie started she ordered ice, and immediately I started putting my foot up and put ice on it. And it was by the grace of Yahuwah that she had packed in the bag these strips for sprains and everything. I mean, of all the things that she was going to pack, but she packed these strips in. And it's for when you've sprained your foot that you can bind it up with this, it's like this stuff that you pull and then it stays on, and it's for sprains and all of that, and for pain and that. And she'd even packed in the stuff for the pain, she packed all the stuff in the bag. And we immediately started sending out messages to people asking them to pray. Immediately. And the Father, by His grace, allowed my foot the following day. I mean, we needed to walk. We walked up a flight of six stories. It was like a spiral building, and from there He wanted me to go blow my shofar from that top of that building. This is the building that I had to go and blow the shofar up there, and there was no lift, there was nothing. It was a spiral walkway that was 6 flights, 6-story building that I needed to climb to the top. And now I've got a sprained foot that I can barely walk on it. But the Father did a miracle. He numbed it for me. He numbed it. That it was uncomfortable for me to walk because of the swelling and everything, but yet I was still able to walk. And then when I stood up there and I said, Father, where do you want me to do the final thing of me dancing? And He said, right there on the beach. And it was a marble piece of, it was right on the, it was like, it was where the seafront, it's like a seafront, but it's not a beach with sand. It's actually like a walkway where you walk. And there it's got, like places where you can sit, and it's got like these places that's like marble, and this formed like a perfect stage. And He said, down there. I said, Father, at this time it's drizzling, the place is wet, and this is marble, and I need a dance, and I got a sprained foot. And I'm saying, how, Father, how? He says, that's where you will do it. And let me tell you something. On this very piece of marble place, with a sprained foot, on the day of Yom Kippur, I'm offering the Father the worship from a broken, contrite place, truly paying a price here in my flesh. Having to dance in a place where it's marble, it's slippery. And I'm thinking, if I slip, it's going to get even worse. But He steadied me. And He allowed me to, even with that sprained foot, I was able to dance. And let me tell you, by the time we got to Israel, that foot was bruised, black. It was so bad. And the whole time I had people praying for me for the healing of the foot. It didn't heal. It was sprained. But He numbed it. That He took away the pain for the time that I was in Israel. But by the time I got back here, that pain was back. And believe me, I knew I had a sprained foot. And then I had to land up going for physio to finally get that foot right. That then cost me the money, because I didn't have a medical aid. I don't have a medical aid, so that cost me money again to get that foot fixed. So you know what? You're talking to someone that's paid a price. I can tell you now, if the Father says it's left, it's left. If the Father says it's right, it's right. If the Father says put on that clothes, I put that on. If the Father says put that shoes, I put on. If the Father tells me this is what you do, I don't question. I still sometimes, look, I'm not going to say that I don't question. I would be saying I sometimes still ask twice, but I don't go there. I've learned. And how did I learn? Because I've paid a price to learn. So, this is where we need to understand. I'm giving you a testimony of what has happened with me in both cases in 1 year of when the Father was going to teach me. Because I don't have time. When He's sending me out into the nations and He says to me, right, now you need to go do this here and you need to go do this there. And I'm going to sit and say, oh no, I can't do it. I need a shema, listen and obey. Because that's the way it is. And now I don't question my Father anymore. In the sense of where, even if it doesn't make sense to me, like what He asked me to do this April that's just gone by now, the work that we had to do, the assignment that He gave us in this April that's just gone by now, this is the first time I ever truly feared doing a work that He asked me to do. But even in that place of where I thought, Father, how can you ask me to do this? And I feared in my flesh, I was fearing, but yet I obeyed the instruction. Because I fear Him more than I fear myself or my flesh or anything else or man or whoever. Because man cannot do anything to me. But He is the one that will believe you me. So, I want to finish off. If we look at what Job, at the end of Job, and this is what I just want to finish off with this. Job 42, and Job answered Yahuwah and said, you know that you are able to do all, and that no purpose is withheld from you. There, you see, Job came to the understanding. He says, you know that you are able to do all, and that no purpose is withheld from you. So there's nothing that escapes the Father. Nothing that He cannot do. Nothing. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore, I declare, but I did not understand matters too marvelous for me, which I did not know. You see, Job was trying to assess the situation out of his own little mindset. But by the time the Father started saying to him, where were you when I created the heavens and the earth? Where were you when I did this and this? Then Job started to understand that he didn't know his Creator at all. And he says, I have heard of you, but the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes sees you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. And it came to be after Yahuwah had spoken these words to Job that Yahuwah said to Eliphaz and Temanite, these are the two friends, my wrath has burned against you and your two friends, and for you have not spoken of me what is right, as did my servant Job. So you see, we see that the two friends of Job were assessing the Father in a way that was not right. And Job gets to a place of where he totally humbles, where he says, before all of this that I went through, before all of this that you put me through, he says that you know that you are able to do all, and that no purpose is withheld from you. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I declared, but I did not understand. So he was declaring his scriptures, he was doing all of this, but did he really understand who he was dealing with? Did he really understand the Creator of the universe? Matters too marvelous for me, which I did not know. So there was things that he didn't even know about the Father when he started to open up his eyes and show him all the things of who he is in the few chapters before. And he says, I have heard of you, but by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes sees you. So sometimes the Father needs to take you through something so that you may know who He is, because that's what He wants to do, reveal Himself to us, so that we may know who He is. Because at the end of the day, that is what He wants to do. He wants to reveal Himself to us. And that we may come to a place like Job and says, my ears have heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Because you will see Him in the midst of the greatest trial and the greatest test. He wants to reveal Himself to you. So that is why He doesn't always want us to pray it away. And that is why He's trying to reveal His character to us of who He is, while we go through our suffering, while we go through our testing, while we go through our trials. And this is why we need to understand that everything of what we've got to go through is for a purpose and a plan. And that is why Job says nothing is withheld from him. He could do anything he wanted. And if this is what he wants to do, that he wants to put him through a test, to be able to show himself strong in the eyes of the devil himself, so be it, because he's the creator of the universe, and who am I to speak against it? So we will continue next week as we will then continue to go a little bit deeper into this understanding of why we got to be tested, why we got to be trialed, why we've got to suffer. And as we start to look at even David, and as we start to look at our own Messiah, and as we start to look at the life of Paul, and as we start to go into these scriptures that are in our word, and we start to understand that this is leading us up to a deeper revelation of what it truly means to be an overcomer and to truly be given a crown in the end. Let me tell you something, you're not just going to be given a crown. Because when we really start to understand that crown, you have to pay a price. It's like the price of, you pay a price for the great pull, the price for the pull. It's the pull of great price. For you to get that pull, you have to pay a great price. So praise Abba, we will finish off here today. And I just pray that you have a blessed time further with Abba, and we just thank him for this time in what we've had to share, and may he be glorified through it all. Amen.